What's up YouTube, and welcome to another tier list video. This time the tier list is catered towards Trial Tower. So basically this is how useful units are for doing the content that is Trial Tower. In C tier it's units that will never see play because they're trash for this mode. In B tier it's units that can be used but they won't get you far in the Trial Towers. A tier are units that can actually be useful, again early on, but fall off the higher you go in the tower. Or in the case of Lime, you just have Rachel, who's a better version of her. But she's also A tier, sadly. But in S tier, we have units whose passives are good, but also situational. For example, you want to use Yuri Haas passive sometimes if you want to keep your DPS alive one extra turn. You want Choco BB if your damage isn't enough. Jinsung if you want to stun stall for another turn to prolong. Night Queen 0 to passive lock someone, and so. Basically, all in all, units that you want to have when doing the Trial Tower. But you don't really... it's not really a must if you want to be going up the floors. In SS is units that are capable of carrying you. As you can see, Huayun, she can destroy floors which have a bunch of KDs and Queen names. GKZ sadly isn't worth the maximum tier because in this mode she just dies turn 2 or 3 most of the time, usually turn 2, but she can still pack a decent amount of burn damage and as well as confusion. Viol, again for the same reason as Huayun, but he's even better in some situations. Mame, you could argue that she's triple S tier because of how useful absolute damage is, but I feel like if I'm giving Unleashed Raziel the triple S tier, then Mame should be only double S. Which also reminds me that I made a mistake. He should also be triple S tier because he can do the same thing as Unleashed Raziel. The only difference is that his attack is not AoE. Which in this case doesn't really matter, it's only important if the enemy team has a mash lime or something like that. Everything else here is also self-explanatory. You might be wondering why is Obeda here? Well, because unlike KD, she can't get absolute damage on her own. She can thwart, but again, not really that great. Her C2 can do more damage if you do it twice, so she can output a higher amount of damage in some situations, but I still believe that she's not worth the triple S tier. And in the triple S tier, we have Lydie, who can not only pack a punch, but can also survive. Also, her passive to become damage immune is quite insane, as well as the fact that she can taunt during that time and basically tank a lot of damage. Unleashed Raziel, he can absolute damage buff all of your DPS at the same time, so if you have more units, he's pretty great. Pooh, her revival is insane. KD, you know why. Heavenly Warlord Dark, he is basically, not only can he output a huge amount of damage for the first 3 turns, which is usually how long your trial floors last, but you can even use him to revive some units, for example Endorsi and such sack units. Queen Name White, she might do less damage with her C2, but her C3 is able to do what Quarion can. So I feel like she deserves a tier above. Mujin, he can give himself absolute damage with the C3, he can stun, and he can remove buffs with his C1, which is quite insane. Also, if there's only one enemy left, your C2 can pack a really solid punch. Mash Lime, I think there's no questions to be asked for this. 3 turns of damage immunity in a mode that lasts around 3 turns usually is quite insane, as well as her abilities to reduce the buff duration of the enemies. And debuffs on your own team. Max Devil Warrior, he can not only stun the enemies, but he can do an insane C3 nuke. So you basically charge it up, you do C2, 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 and before he's about to die, when you have maximum coins, you give him absolute damage and do a C3, which is insane. Sujin Rock, you might be wondering, why is Lifeguard Poo in SS and Sujin Rock in Triple S? Well, Sujin Rock has a lot more sustain without the requirement of bringing yourself a Poo, as well as being able to bring something like BDR. So that's why, in my opinion, she's better, and as well as the fact that she can do what Yama does, taunt in silence, which will help your DPS survive longer. For Lifeguard Poo, she can do it with the C3, but that's only once every 2 turns, while she can do it basically every turn if you're just doing C2, C2, C2. This might be kind of controversial, but Vendorsi, in my opinion, is quite insane for Trial Tower. Why is that? Well, if you're crazy enough, you can repeat until you get a C2 that confuses all the enemies, which gives you basically 1 extra turn, which is insane. But as well, at the cost of your mental health for resetting a billion times. The new collab MC is quite insane because he can also stun all enemies, and he can pack a 240% piercing damage attack, as well as he has survivability, etc. Bam Ipyo, we said I made a mistake at the start putting him in C tier because I completely forgot that he has an insane C3 which does the exact same as Unleashed Raziel. That's basically the only thing you're bringing him in for if you do not have Unleashed Raziel. And Narin Ha, she's quite insane because not only does her normal C3 do what Hwarion does, but if you do it again, you thwart all enemies, which is a guaranteed 1 turn delay. So if you bring, for example, Vendorsi and Narin Ha, you use Vendorsi for a C2 Confuse All turn 1, then you use a C3 on Narin Ha. Then on the next turn, if you bring 1 unit less than you are allowed, you can again instantly do her C3, which will in turn make all of the enemies lose another turn, so you're delaying 2 turns. And yeah, just basically quite insane. Well, I hope this helped. I tried to go more in detail for the Triple S tier this time. Leave a comment down below if you think this is better, or if you prefer me just saying what the tiers stand for in my opinion, in case I do further tier lists. Thank you guys for watching, and see ya.